Katie, would you grab the lights? So this is where we left off on Tuesday. We were curious, I was curious on your behalf, of why we were finding these dedications that people had certainly won in funerary games up on the Athenian Acropolis. What sort of people would have acquired these? I mean, aside from people who were athletically gifted. What type of, how would you categorize them?
Upper class.
Upper class. Is that what you were going to say, folks?
Yeah, I was going to say people with money.
Yeah, people with money, upper class. Upper class people. One of the little conflicts in any social situation is that the mores, the haves, are or should be, just except for, New York bankers and traders today, but most of the time, they should be at least slightly cognizant of the effect of their having on those who have not, right? So periodically you will see that some of the haves, some of those people in the upper classes, will try to deflect some of the bad karma, social bad karma that might come their way. And this is one example of that. Another example of that is that as time goes on, and now we're moving down into the 7th century, we're moving out of the 8th century, but you thought that wasn't going to happen, huh? Burial jars start to shrink, and the decorations on them, while the subjects stay the same, the jars themselves no longer act as markers above ground. So this amphora, named the Analotos amphora because it is the hand of the painter has been identified as the same as the hand of a painter of a pot that was found in the town of Analotos. Do not, so just in case you were curious why it was called that. The Analotos amphora, and what's going on here on the Analotos amphora? What's happening up here at the top frame?
The very top one?
Yeah, the panel, the top panel. Oh, not them. Oh yeah, those are weird, aren't they? Those are sphinxes. That's the 7th century Greek version of a sphinx. Human head. Whoa, who knows? Wings, sphinx. This panel, what's going on? There are people. What are they doing? Yeah, they're dancing, right? They're dancing. And what's happening in the middle panel, or the main body panel? Somebody over here? Speak. Chariot procession. What event would both of these activities occur at? Possibly a wedding. What other event? A funeral. More likely this is a funeral because it was found in a grave. So are people dancing at the funeral? Yay, somebody's dead. Let's all dance. What event would the dancing go with? A game, right, a game, some kind of competition. So, excellent decoding. So what you've done is decode that in the 7th century BCE in Greece, funerals were still accompanied by games. There were events. People probably won prizes. There was competition. There was processing, funeral processing. Some of the aspects are epic or Homeric, like the procession of people in chariots. Some are not. There's no mention in Iliad 23 of dancing. Achilles would be over his dead body. I guess you could get that idea from the way he is presented by Homer. This vessel is 31 and a half inches high, so under a yard, under 3 feet. So I don't know, probably about this. That is substantially smaller than the Dipylon amphora, which is really enormous. And it wasn't above ground. So the pictures now are doing something else. I mean, the pictures are there for another reason, right? Because now they're no longer, it's not a billboard, sort of elite billboard. Somebody important is buried here. This is about somebody important. They're fun, these pictures. People like to put pictures on pots, and they like pictures. It's a pictorial, it's become a pictorial culture. And these vessels, even vessels that are going to be buried and nobody is going to see anymore, are considered reasonable venues for the pictures. Pictures on pots. Here's another 7th century BC burial amphora. This one, however, is enormous. It is almost as tall as me. It's 4 feet 9 inches. I am 5 feet 1. So it comes up to about, I don't know, my ear. That is a very large pot. It was the burial vessel for a child. It was found in the town of Eleusis, and so it is called the Eleusis amphora. Very fascinating pictures, 2 double pictures on it. On the body of the vessel these are some weird looking ladies. We know they're ladies because they're wearing skirts. But what is the deal with their head? They have things sprouting out of their head. There is 1, 2, and then on the side, the part that you can't see going around the body, a third of these ladies. And the third one, her head has been decapitated. This can be no other group of gals than the Gorgon sisters. 3 girls, one of whom, the lead, Medusa, had her head chopped off by enterprising young man named Perseus. And so this is a Greek myth. It's a Greek myth of the Gorgon sisters. Perseus, hero, chops off the head of one of the Gorgons. Why is it important to chop off the head of a Gorgon? Not just because you might have some antipathy towards Gorgons, but because their faces were so frightening and so scary that if you met the eyes of a Gorgon gal, you would be turned to stone, which would slow you in your tracks. That would be bad. So Perseus decapitated the head of Medusa. So this is a very fun Greek story. A lot of the Greek stories, as we know, are very fun. This story that's depicted here is one very, very large fellow crammed into this small space of the upper panel, and 2, one might assume to be normal-sized fellows, and they have a bad plan for this big guy. And the bad plan is that they're shoving a stake in what looks like his head, but well, okay. So it looks like his head, right. So they're shoving a stake in his head, and he's holding a cup. And this is an illustration of one of the funniest and most beloved wacky little stories from the Odyssey, one of the other epics that was circulating around Greece now, the story of Odysseus, the hero of the Odyssey, who was stuck for a little while, sea-wrecked, on an island where these very, very enormous, gigantic guys named Cyclops, the ones who later Greeks thought built the walls of Tiryns, those Cyclops, lived. Cyclops have they have 3 features that differentiate them from the normal run of us people. 1, they were abnormally large. 2, they had only 1 eye. And 3, they like to eat people. Otherwise, they were just like us. So Odysseus and his fellows they had gone to sleep in the cave of a Cyclops, not realizing that it was the cave of a Cyclops. And then the Cyclops came home, rolled a big rock in front of the door of his cave, found these guys and started to smash them around and eat them. And Odysseus and his men had to think quick of a plan, what to do. And the plan that they came up with was to get the guy drunk. And after he had just lolled off to sleep in a drunken stupor, they would take a stake, heat it in the fire, and pierce his eye with it. They would only take 1. See, that was the advantage of only having 1 eye. Once you get rid of the 1, blind him. And then they would have to figure out how to get out because they were too puny to be able to move the rock of the cave. And they do figure out how to get out, otherwise we wouldn't have the rest of the story, including the heartwarming reconciliation with Penelope at the end, which we all love. So this is a piece of that narrative. And you get all the parts all together in one. You get the Cyclops, shown here as abnormally large. You can tell that he's being made to be drunk because he's holding the cup in his hand. Now you might complain that if we know that they're shoving the stake in his eye, why does he have an eye here? Well, he has an eye here for a very obvious reason. How would you know that he was a Cyclops if the artist didn't show you the eye? So what the artist has done here is kind of smush all of the elements together and do a little telescoping of the events. So 2 fun stories. One that we know from epic, one that we know from Greek myth, on this burial jar. Of, as I said, actually a child. There was a child's only partially cremated remains inside. Despite the enormity of the jar, very, very large, it was buried. It wasn't one of those ones that stood up. The interest, the need for, or you might even think of it as a sort of obsession with narrating events that have to do with the funeral, sort of real time, hasn't disappeared. We saw it on the Analotos Amphora, but it's been enlarged. So now other topics are also suitable for telling because there are a lot of stories running around and it's fun to make pictures of them. That's partially what's going on. All right. Attica. Attica, in the beginning of the Dark Ages, after the collapse of the Mycenaean world, was very sparsely populated. There were really just a little collection of settlements right around Athens itself. Menide, Aliki Glyphada, which is today a very fancy suburb of Athens. When I lived in Athens when I was working my dissertation for a couple years in the mid-'80s, it was the only place with an American-style supermarket. I used to take the bus out there periodically to get peanut butter. So Aliki Glyphada, Menide, and Athens itself. The evidence, of course, are the graves. You know, and I know you know because we've been reading your reading reports, and you guys have done a great job. You'll get them back not next Tuesday. Sadly, we will not be here next Tuesday, but a week from Tuesday. You'll get both reading reports back next week, in case you were curious about that. You know that in the 11th and 10th centuries, there are very, very few settlements, just the evidence for very few settlements, and the evidence is graves. A couple additional settlements show up in the early geometric period, the 9th century. Again, I'm telling you something that you already know, but I'm just showing you visuals to solidify it in your head. The evidence, again, is graves. This grave group, for example, was found in a burial area at the site of Thorikos. We can date the pottery by the style of it. Some of you noted with other early geometric pottery, there's a lot of black paint on the pot, not a lot of pictures, not a lot of space that's left blank. That's what all of these are, and so by looking at them, we can tell that they're early geometric. I just have to put in a little plug that the person who discovered this tomb and published it was William MacDonald, who started the Department of Archaeology here at the University of Minnesota and had his entire career here, and was a very, very great and famous archaeologist who did wonderful things. Yay, Minnesota archaeologists. So a couple more settlements show up in the 9th century, but then, wham, all of a sudden in the 8th century, as you all well know, a kind of population explosion, settlements and cemeteries all over Athens, over 28 of them that we know of. Who are they and where do they come from? What do you know about this? You don't even have to guess because you already have Mr. Whitley's elegant concluding summation about this. Where do all these people come from? Are they immigrants from other places? So people moving in from elsewhere. But what does Whitley conclude about the re-peopling of Attica, this region of Greece? In the back. Moving out from Athens and repopulating the countryside. That's Whitley's conclusion, right? Now it is of course not impossible that by no means, and it's also unprovable. It's not the case that people have moved into some of these settlements of Attica from places outside of Attica. That's not unreasonable. One of the pieces of supporting testimony that Whitley adduces for his conclusion is that the Athenians, the people who lived in Attica themselves, all believed that they were all Athenians. Attica is the region. Athens is the city. But Attica, as Whitley points out in the article that you read, the local traditions were, and the history supports this, was always politically united. That people came from Athens itself. So some people might have been moving in from other places of Greece, but it's not unreasonable to speculate, to go along with Whitley's explanatory hypothesis that it's from Athens or from the settled area here in the middle of the valley of Attica that population spread out through the countryside. And then those few earlier sites, Thorikos, Eleusis, Menete, Aliki Glyphada, what do we see at those older sites in the 8th century when the rest of Attica starts to become so populated? Hero cult offerings. Absolutely. Hero cult offerings. So here, for example, is a Mycenaean Tholos tomb at Thorikos. Now you just have to imagine, you come from a family that's lived at Thorikos since the 9th century. That's when Thorikos is resettled. You don't come from these people. There's been a gap in occupation. You are not them. In fact, you don't have any idea who these people are. You don't have any idea who left these extremely impressive remains that are on the outskirts of the town that you live in. But you like them. They're very, very cool. You think nothing of them for a while, your family. And then 2 generations down the road, when other settlements spring up throughout the countryside, apparently you folks in Thorikos feel a little pressure, feel the need to assert some sense of cultural primacy. And this is one of the ways that people did this in the 8th and the 7th centuries. They turned these much older, actually unconnected with them, but very impressive remains into sites that they, by virtue of a ritual that was created, asserted a relationship to. So you start to go, not for a picnic lunch, but for some kind of little ritual. Your family, these families in the settlement start to go out to the Tholos tomb. You have to imagine that it had its roof at that time, so it would have been more impressive. This is the way it looks now. And you leave offerings. You don't know who's buried in this tomb, but you know 2 things. Whoever was buried in this tomb must have been a big deal, because the tomb is a big deal. structurally. So it's a very impressive thing. You don't know who it is, but whoever it was is an important person. And whoever it was lives in the shady past. A past that's becoming more vivid all the time because of the spread of Homeric epic. But you don't connect this with somebody from Homeric epic specifically. How do we know? How do we know that the people who lived in Thoricos aren't saying, this is the home of whoever, Neoptolemus or somebody like that?
No inscriptions.
No inscriptions, but maybe nobody wanted to bother to leave an inscription. Couldn't we suppose that they assumed that this was a Homeric connection? Why do we suppose that that's not the case?
Weren't there some...
Yeah.
Weren't there incredibly vague inscriptions? One that just said hero?
There's one site where there's a very vague inscription, but sometimes, you might go to today, or at any time, you could go to a religious place, you could make an offering, you might know well who you're making an offering to. It doesn't necessarily mean that you inscribe the offering. Why do we suppose that they didn't connect this tomb with somebody from heroic epic? Ben? Why? In the epics, the burial type is different. So you might think, well, this can't be the burial of so-and-so because they weren't buried in a place like this. That's one reason. Another reason would be, nobody from epic comes from this place. The epic heroes come from very specific places. There are important palatial sites, and they're repeated over and over. And there are not that many. This is not one of them. In fact, none of the places in Attica is the home of a Homeric hero. And yet, there are offerings made at these sites. That is why we call them heroes in a generic way instead of Homeric heroes. So, what it looks like is that the spread of epic, in a way, inspires and is linked to hero cult, but not in a direct way. It's not as if people said, some of those guys come from here. What people seem to have said is, those were the days. Those were the days of the big, great guys and these epic heroes, and here are some more of them. All right, so we don't happen to have any stories about these ones, but these are this is that same era, that is that same period. Now, if you live someplace like this, if you live in Thoricos, and you've got remains like this on the outskirts, and after 50 or 100 years, it's just commonplace that this is a ritual site that's connected with your settlement, and it's a place of the very deep past, you feel a connection to, an organic link to that past. That past is very real to you. It belongs to you. Why does it belong to you? Because you live in the same place where there's a big monument from that past. The ritual links you in the present day to it. And it becomes a part of how you think about your identity. It becomes a part of who you are. Andros. Guys, I read about Andros for today. Andros, little island, adorable little island in the middle of the Aegean. On the island of Andros is this site on this spur, and the site is Zagora. I thought I would go again and show you a few details in color because those couple 2D black and white drawings in Mr. Morris's article are so boring. So if you're up on the site of Zagora, this is the view, very nice. Looking down, Zagora itself is quite strategically situated on the edge of a long plateau, and that it's pretty sheer drop down. The water source is actually down here, down. So it would be a lot of trouble to go back and forth to get your water, but it would be a lot of trouble for somebody to come and get you. I mean, it's a secure place. So this is an era where there's still an interest in a settlement that has some natural security properties. And for the aspects of the settlement that are less naturally secure, like the part of the headland that makes it easy to enter the site, the Zagora'ians built a wall. So they had a fortification wall protecting their little settlement. The settlement at Zagora begins in what century? As you can all tell from this pot. Yes, what century? I so cleverly did not write that on here, figuring that you would be able to figure it out in a flash. What century is it with pots that have geometric designs, but the pots are mostly black? Yes. 9th. Early geometric, 9th century. So here is the town plan of Zagora. Here's the area of the town plan. Now, of course, there was more of the town than this. This is the town plan as it was in its final excavation plan. So these are just areas. All of these little squares on the map here are the archaeological grid lines. So the excavators worked in this grid and this grid and this grid, and then there are just areas that they didn't excavate. So the town is probably much bigger, but this is the part that we have. And if you read about Zagora in the sort of fast and easy report, or like a summary statement, John Pedley, I think, talks a little bit about Zagora in his book. You get the sense of the way a typical house at Zagora looked, and here is a reconstruction drawing of one of those houses. And the houses have several rooms, a room for storage, and in the storage room there were kind of a bench or a raised platform, and these very large jars that almost certainly were for water, or at least largely for water, because it's such a lot of trouble to go get the water. You want to store some so that you don't have to do that every day necessarily. So there was storage, and every house had this set up. One of the interesting things about the town plan of Zagora is that all the houses are more or less the same. There's not an elite quarter, or at least not one that was excavated. The houses are same layout, same size, same plan. So they have these storage areas, and inside the houses were found the effects of daily life, the effects of living. So there's a cooking pot, and a little cooking pot that comes with its own sort of hibachi underside, so that you can make the fire underneath this, and then you could boil your soup or cook your leg of lamb or whatever it is that you're going to be doing in your pot. Morris in his article refers to the specific finds inside the houses, and I thought it would be nice for you to be able to see what some of these finds look like. How can it be that archaeologists can be so sure that different activities occurred in these houses? Well, we can be so sure because we have the remains that were used by people for these different activities. So cooking vessels is one of them. These things are spindle whorls. So if you have sheep or goat, one of their products would be wool. And after you shear it, before you can weave it, you need to spin it. And in order to spin it, you need some sort of a long stick. It's usually called a spindle, and a weight at the end of it. And you wrap a bunch of your yarn. It's not really yarn yet. Your wool around it, and then you toss this stick down, and the weight at the end turns the entire stick into a kind of top. And as it spins, it pulls the wool out, and that's how you get the threads that you then would use to weave. Spindle whorls, lots of them are found in all of the houses, not just a few, meaning people took care of themselves. Everybody cooked, everybody spun, they made their own clothes. This is a real little town on the prairie, up here at Zagora. And people had drinking vessels. So it's easy to tell right away that something like this is for a different function than the cooking pot. These cups. So this middle geometric cup, first half of the 8th century BC, middle geometric because there's a lot less black on the pot, and there's a little picture of two, I don't know, kissing water birds or something. I don't know what they're doing. All right. But this reconstruction of a house is one phase of the development of Zagora houses, as you read in Mr. Morris's article. So in around 750, the houses are simple, single or double rooms, maybe a four-porch and then one back room. And every activity, cooking, spinning, all sorts of tasks of daily life, and sitting down and eating, all occurred in that one room. Everybody was in that one place because we find the remains from all of those activities all in one room. Within a generation, people started to, at Zagora, subdivide their houses. And we get special storage places with the benches and some space which is just for living, not for storage. And then the big change is that within another generation, so now if this is your house, the one that I just showed you, so if this is your house, that was your parents' house. This is your house. But what your kids do is this. They add on to the house a courtyard space, and in addition to the courtyard space, they add on a kind of special function room off the courtyard space. Either it's one large room, like H42 here, or an anteroom and then another room back there. And we know from the finds in these rooms, you gotta love archaeology. Archaeology is so cool. This is so cool. Listen, because of the finds in the rooms, we know what people were doing there. We know what you were doing in there. And what you were doing in there is eating and drinking. Because the table vessels of this phase are mostly found in these rooms. These sorts of vessels are found in these rooms, not over here. So functions are separating out. The houses are not just bigger, but they're separate spaces for separate activities. And they're linked, they're organized around a central courtyard. At Zagora, there are these two neighborhoods that were excavated with houses, lots and lots of houses. So the houses that you're looking in detail at on the right side of the screen are right here in the plan, right there. So there are these two neighborhoods of houses. You see, they're all interconnected. The houses were built with party walls. And then there's something interesting. The little structure that I just put that yellow circle around that is not connected to anything else, is freestanding, has been identified as a religious structure. There are no accoutrements of daily life found in the structure. No spindle whorls, no cooking vessels, no drinking cups. So it looks like the plan of the first or the second stage house, or actually the first stage house. It looks like the earliest house plan with just a single room and an anteroom. In fact, this setup of a rectangular structure with a big back room and an anteroom, a sort of four-room, and two posts or kind of columns on either side of the doorway should remind you of a building type that we have already seen. Very good. Excellent. Yes, a megaron. Now, this little temple is the second stage of religious activity in the center of the town of Zagora. How do we know? Because the first stage is this altar, which, as you can see, and I don't know, whoever was in charge of this was, somebody's cousin who couldn't get a job doing something else because he's not a very good contractor. Because he could not even center his friggin' building around the altar. But that's good. It's good for us because that's one of the ways that we can tell that the altar almost certainly came first. Because if you were going to put the altar in and then put the building around it, I mean, if you were going to put the building there and then put the altar in, probably you wouldn't arrange it like this. Not only is it not centered, it's not even aligned. As you can tell, it's not a mistake. The edges of the altar are skewed from the edges of the structure. So the altar came first. Religious activity, giving offerings to, and there was a pit with offerings found on the outside of the little temple structure. And in the pit were found bones of baby piglets and baby goats. And also the majority of the metal finds from the site. So something that was worth money. Most of the metal finds were not in the houses. Bracelets, pins, rings were given as offerings to this deity. We don't know the name of the deity. There's no evidence for who the name of the deity is. An unnamed deity. So this is 7th century BCE. The altar is probably 8th century. In this period, the 8th and the 7th century, we start to get evidence for structures at religious sites throughout Greece. And many of them look the same as this structure at Zagora. So here, from the Argive Hieraion, is this adorable little clay temple model, painted very gaily. And you see that it's a rectangle, and it has a single large back room, and a forecourt with 2 little columns adorning the sides of the entry door. This could be a model of the Zagora temple, but it's not. It's just that these temples have this same, most of these temples have this same plan. And what's interesting about this is, at the very same time that the houses are getting more complicated, larger, more elaborate, the houses for the gods is this old-fashioned style of structure, this earlier style of structure. It's megaron style. That little temple model comes from this place, the Argive Hieraion. The Argive Hieraion is another way of saying the sanctuary of Hera in the Argolid, or Argive Hera. And this is the sanctuary site, which is near Prosimna. Hey, do you have your maps? You know the maps that I gave you that came with the Whitley question set, the Argolid map? Get that map out. So we're right near Prosimna. We know that by the 8th century, there was a cult site here. We suppose, or we call it for convenience, a cult site for Hera, even though the actual evidence for Hera specifically is later. So the evidence for ritual activity, including, for example, that little temple model, is 8th century. That's when we get the evidence that ritual activity begins here. So we just call it, for convenience, the sanctuary of Argive Hera once it starts, even though we don't know for sure that it's her. So this platform that you see here, that is much later. So ignore that. And this terrace wall too, much later. Ignore that. But this is the site, and you get a sense of the setting. It's on the edge of a hillside, looking out over the Argive plain. It's on the edge of a hillside, and the hillside, of course, is basically natural. Right below the edge of this terrace here is a very, very large Cyclopean-style terrace wall. Just looking at the style of the wall, what date might you think it was? Just looking at the style of the wall, what date might you think it was? You in the blue all the way in the back. Tenth? Did you say 10th? Why? It is similar to something older. What's it similar to? Mycenaean, what? Where? Tiryns, Mycenae, right. So that wouldn't be 10th century. What century would that be? Yeah, and even 13th, 12th century BCE. So it is the same style as that. However, due to the magic of archaeology, excavating behind the terrace wall at the Argive Heraeon, this is the sort of pottery that comes out. And this is late geometric, 8th century BCE, as you can all tell. And so, this is very weird. Hey, this is very weird. This great big Cyclopean wall, built to look like something from the deep past, was built in the 8th century BCE. Who built it and why? Take a minute or two to talk to somebody near you. Who built this wall and why? You're going to think about what you read about in Whitley. Talk to each other. Talk, talk, talk. I know. Isn't this better than what you were doing last semester? Who cannot love the Greeks? The Greeks are so cool.
I didn't realize how much I missed class until I'm like, oh, that was great. Oh, how fun. I like stories.
Right, exactly.
Do you want to just, at the end of class, let them know that I'm still going to have office hours?
Yes.
Because I don't want them to think that I won't be around either, because they have their other reading reports too.
Exactly.
So.
Thank you. Yes. Don't. Yes. I will.
Anyway, so.
Oh, that's right.
I know. I was like, oh shoot.
Oh, we forgot to collect them. Yes, right. Okay. Okay. I'll stop 2 minutes before. Okay, isn't this good? This is such a good puzzle. This is very fun. Who built this wall and why? What do you think, you back there in the red? That would be you. Yeah. Okay, wait. Let's start like this. Who are the contenders? Look at your map. Where are the settlements in the 8th century BC? You all remember what Mr. Willey said. There are very few settlements in the Argolid in the 8th century, just 5. There are really only 3 logical contenders. What are they? What 3 settlements in the Argolid in the 8th century BCE are the logical contenders? I give you a great big hint. Look at the little pictures on the side that I put there for you. What are the 3 contenders? Thank you. Argos, Tiryns, and Mycenae. Okay. Argos, Tiryns, and Mycenae. Those are the logical contenders. Now, back to you in the red. Which one and why? Because let's come up with a reason that would support the identification of any one of these. A reason to suppose that it was people from Mycenae that built this wall. Look at your map. What would be a reason to suppose that that was a logical reason? They're the closest. They're the closest. And we know that there is a thriving settlement there in the 8th century BCE. What would be a reason that Tiryns would have built a wall like this in the 8th century BC, the people at Tiryns?
Because they already built a wall just like it.
Of course, so the people who are living there in the 8th century BCE are not the people who built the wall in the 13th century BCE, but this wall is the most like their wall. So it'd be like, this is a Tyryn-style Cyclopean wall. What would be a reason to think that it was the Argives, the people from the city of Argos? Why would they want to imitate this style? Well, they could build some new and improved style. What would be the point of building this old, weird style? All the way in the back.
They're trying to uphold the old standards rather than
Are they older? No, they're not. If they are a newer settlement, and by newer I mean not a Mycenaean settlement, they don't have Cyclopean-style walls, Tholos tombs, the people at Argos. Why would, if it was the Argives, why would they build a wall in a style that doesn't match their own settlement? Why would you do that? What would be the...
They're trying to connect themselves to the past. They want that link, that heritage, and the hero cults. They're linking themselves to those impressive ones of the past. So they're wanting to link themselves or to kind of assimilate that old past into their...
They might want to assimilate that old past. The Argives, as you learned from reading Whitley, seek to control the entirety of the Argolid plain. This is the top of the Citadel of Argos. This is a medieval castle that's on the top of the citadel. The people in the village at Mycenae, the people in the village at Tiryns, those are long-lived villages. They're small, but they have remained populated. They have got some extremely cool, clearly very old remains around their towns. The Argives want to do two things. First of all, assert that they're the big boss. They're the ones in charge of all of this territory. The Argive Heraion is at the far end of this plain. You can't see it in the distance, near Mycenae. So now of course, being as how this is archaeology and we don't actually know who really built the wall, we just have these speculations, but what most people think is that it was the Argives, who were, we deduce, interested in asserting their claim, as you in the back pointed out, to the Argolid plain. And one of the ways that you could, in the 8th century, make a case for yourself as reasonably in charge was to link yourself to the past. So if you make it look like this has always been part of our territory since a long time ago. You're not the only people with big, fancy, gigantic stone walls. We too have that. Then that would be a way to make that case. In the beginning of the Dark Ages, after the fall of Mycenaean world, there are a handful of sanctuary sites across the Greek world. And by sanctuary sites, I just mean open-air altars, places where we have evidence for people who came to gather, Some offerings were made. There are fragments of figurines and sometimes some bronze fragments, probably of cauldrons, left at these places. Olympia is one of them. Delphi is one of them. So there are about 10 or 12, not more, in the 9th century. By the end of the 8th century, by the year 700 BCE, there are over 70 sanctuary sites across the Greek world. You're looking at a map here. Over half of them have a building in addition to just having offerings and an altar. This is one of them, this little speck in the Aegean that I've just put the red box around, and it is the island of Delos. Kathy Morgan, in the article that you hopefully read, even though I didn't make you do a reading report on it, for last week, talks a little bit about the sanctuary at Delos. There's an early building at Delos, and there are remains of, from the 7th century, some pretty fancy and interesting offerings. This is one of them. This lady, who we call Nicandre, is 5'9" tall. She could play basketball or volleyball, very big. So she's almost 6 feet tall, and she's a skinny slab of stone, as you can see by looking at her in side view. Obviously a lady by hair and attire, and she has on her an inscription. One of the things that we start to see in sanctuaries are dedications, like the cauldrons on the top of the Athenian Acropolis. Who could afford to give a dedication like this? Somebody rich. This is a gigantic stone sculpture, almost 6 feet tall. And whoever could afford to do it wanted people to know more than anything who she was. Not the deity to whom she was given, but who she was. We have her name, and we have what the dedicators felt was the most important information about her. And what is that information? She is the daughter of Dinodocles of Naxos, the sister of Dinomides, and the wife of Phaxos. Quick. You have 1 minute. Name as many things as you can that these two things have in common. Quick, quick, quick. Talk. You guys are just lookers, not talkers, huh? Never see. Talk, talk, talk. No talking? All right, all the way in the back. Tell me something. Yeah. No, she's not a burial. Right. What's the context of this lady? Help them out. What's the context of this lady? She's a dedication. Right, she's a dedication in a sanctuary. She's a dedication in a sanctuary. So that's a major difference. The contexts for them are different. What is something that they have in common? Next person. They are both for a woman. What's something else that they have in common? They're both for somebody of the upper class. They are wealthy. They are objects that reflect wealth. What's something else all the way in the back? Say what? They both emphasize family connections. in the depiction of the family on here, in the naming of all of her male relatives on the inscription. Something else.
Well, she's obviously popular. She has a statue of herself in, like, as a dedication and in the picture.
So I don't know that we could say that she's obviously popular. I think the obvious thing is that she's rich, or her family is rich. She comes from a wealthy family. You know what money can do. Can buy you all sorts of stuff. Can't buy you love, but it can buy you a great big statue. Tell me something else. They are both for display. They are both for display. Something else. Yes! They are both really big. What is it with these people? They like big, very big, large. We call that a taste for the monumental. They are not afraid to go big. They like big. The big difference is, as was pointed out at the very beginning, is the context. The display, elite display piece here is connected with an individual's own event, a specific funeral. This, the elite class 100 years later, is turning the focus of where they display their wealth from their own burials to a public space, the public space in this case being a sanctuary. This habit is widespread come the 7th century. So this guy, who's actually very little, he's just about 8 inches high, very adorable little bronze fellow from a sanctuary in Thebes, is also inscribed. You know what? This is so cute. Once the Greeks learn how to write, they just go to town. They write on everything. They write all over the place. They are graffiti artists. And as you can see, it's not about neat. It's about getting their name on something, getting it out there. So, as you can all see, but in case you just didn't want to read it in Greek, I'll tell you what it says in English. So this is what he's got written all over his legs. As you can see that this is where the inscription is. Manticlaus offers me as a tithe to Apollo of the silver bow. Do you, Phoebus, give some pleasing favor in return? The first word in both of these inscriptions is someone's name. That's the most important person in each inscription, somebody's name. And these people have a very close relationship with their deities. They make deals with them. Apollo, here you go. Here's a little statue. Now, your turn. Let's have something back. We are in the year 700. It's 500 years since the fall of the Mycenaean world. Half a millennium. That world also was populated by Greeks. I mean, in the sense that they spoke the same language and they lived in the same land. But the Greek style culture of the Mycenaean era disappeared. A lot of the people stayed, but the culture disappeared. Cultures are not immortal. They are a product of people and the societies. And cultures develop and wax and wane. The Greek world went through some hard times for a couple of hundred years, severely depopulated, unable to take advantage of their human and natural resources. But slowly population increased in the first centuries of the first millennium BCE. And as that population increased, a new culture was made. The year is 700, and all the pieces are now in place for Greek culture. Take 5 minutes, talk to the person near you, make a list of as many aspects as you can. What is Greek culture comprised of? Because this is the culture that we are going to trace the rise of and then the diffusion of for the rest of this semester. Go. I have 12 things on my list. Now, if you sit all the way back here, who do you talk to? Hey, you guys, turn around, talk to him. Who are you talking to? You guys aren't talking to each other. Make a little group. Hey, there's somebody behind you. Turn around. I have 12 things on my list. How many things do you have?
Six.
Keep going. Big things and little things, fun things and serious things. Like, I'll tell you one thing that's on my list. A thing for horses. I mean, they have a thing for horses. There's horses all the time, right? As soon as they can start to draw, that's one of the things they start to draw. There are horses everywhere, lots of them. That's going to last. How many things do you guys have?
Right now we have two.
I have 12. Keep going.
We're working.
Ooh, that's a good one, Jane. Ask him how many things he's got on his list. I have 12. You guys compare notes. How many things do you guys have? 9. Oh, 9, that's good. How many? 7. Compare notes. I have 12.
I know, you've been bragging.
I am. I'm proud.
Just to spite you.
What are you going to, how many?
We have
15. Excellent. That's good. All right. Let's see how many we can come up with. Let's start. Tell me something. Family oriented. The family is the social basis. Something else. Next person in that row. Putting pictures on pots. We don't do this. What is it with this? They like this. A pot is a suitable place to put a picture. A pot is a household billboard. It's like a Post-it note. I got a message. I'm going to paint a picture on a pot. Next, something else. Public display. Public display. Very nice. Something else.
There's also
And what sort of houses do the gods get? Old-fashioned. They get a fancy but an old-fashioned in plan. The gods do not get courtyard houses, right? You get a courtyard house. God gets, a single room, good for the god, but nice, big, adorned. Well, it's not so big yet, but it'll get big. Something else. Stories. A love of story.
The competition in games.
Competition. Yes, competition. In all from the things that we expect, like boxing or chariot racing, to the things that you wouldn't think back in the day they would have had, like dancing. Now we have competitions with dancing. We thought that was our invention, very new. No. Because, right, we had the Dipolon Oinakoi, for he who dances most gaily. So that was Dancing with the Stars back then. Next. Next, that would be you, Mr. Bubble. My son has that exact same T-shirt. Horses. Yeah, a thing for horses. What is it with the horses? They love horses. As soon as they can start to, again, make sculptures, horses adorn things, horses in processions, horses painted on pots, horses, they like horses. Next.
The boasting of the
Elite display. It's not just public. This is how elites show that they're elite. They show off. This is a good example. Nicandria is a good example of that.
Everything dealing with the sea, ships, travel, warfare, trade.
They're a seafaring people geographically. Although at the moment we don't see so much in the way of material emphasis on it. We do have some pictures on pots of people on boats. That's true. We do. There's a sort of subcategory of that. And we have evidence of trade. I mean, we know that they're out and about, seafaring about.
language, writing,
The minute they learn to write, they just start writing on everything. This is silly, to write on, just to start scrawling dedications on every which thing, and not neatly either. Just, I can write, I'm going to show you. They like to write. This is called, by later Greek historians, the epigraphic habit. They like to write. They like to write on things. Next, something else.
The role of women, they're defined by the relation to males.
The role of women. Women are defined by their relation to men. It's not that women cannot have a high status. The woman in the Dipolon Amphora is a high status lady. Nicandria is a high status lady. But she is high status not because of herself. She is high status because of her embeddedness in a family that is high status. Something else that we didn't get yet. Yeah.
The need for heroes, this need for someone to aspire to.
I don't know about it's a need, but it's an acknowledgement of heroes. That this is a potent concept in the culture. There were heroes among us, not now, but then. We have stories about them. We are connected, in fact, with these heroes, and that's something else. What would the tomb cults, for example, the hero cults, suggest as an aspect of this culture?
They value the past. They have a need to connect themselves to the past.
They have a need to connect themselves to the past. This is their past only in a sense of geography, but they claim it as their own and then enliven it by depicting it, making it pertinent to the present. What about their relationship with the inhabitants of these fancy old-fashioned houses, the deities? Awestruck? Well, they like to give them presents all the way in the back. They are very cozy with the gods. Their gods are it's like their buddies. They ask them for favors, they address them by name. They envision their gods to look like them, act like them, for better and for worse. All the petty, nasty, backbiting, double-crossing things that people do to each other, the gods did.
Politically separate, but culture united.
We can see similarities across the Greek world in culture, but we can also see a strong assertion of individuality politically. Civically, they're separate. Culturally, they are united. Something else. Awesome. You guys are very awesome. This is the Greek world. We will watch it develop in even more fancy and glamorous ways, but the base of it will not be different for another 500 years. All of these elements, plus the ones that you have said, we are going to see these played out in various ways. As they disappear, we will be left, come April, to decide when does this culture that started now, when does it turn into something else? Thank you very much. Have a wonderful week. Before you leave, give your papers, pass them down, or bring them down here to Katie. And listen up, Katie, sadly, will be here next week. She will not be going with me to Hawaii. So she will have office hours on Monday, as usual, and the following Monday as well. So for people who are having trouble with their reading reports or just want to chat, Katie will be there Mondays 1 to 3. Thank you.